tonight. Sorry again for the technical difficulties, internet issues, along with maybe just our equipment's not up for it right now. So we'll get back to our talks of the NFL draft and the prospects. We were talking about Devin Neal, so let's kind of do kind of a quick run through of what we had for the receivers. This one's not as deep, as, as far as um, prospects go. Probably a weaker one than we've seen in years past. There's still some good receivers on there, and it's uh, I wouldn't say it's even last year's or maybe even 2 years ago when we had that really good run of you know receivers and what they were able to do. So starting here, we'll go PFF. Ty McMillan 1, Luther Burden 2, Igbuka 3, Golden 4, Ao Manor 5, Jaden Higgins 6, Jack Beck 7, Royals 8, Williams 9, and then your probably your favorite one, Trey Harris.
Yeah, you see where I have them?
Yeah, number number one. Um, and I know you're big on. So let's go ahead and talk why you're so high on Harris.
I don't know why more people aren't. Let's just talk about the overlooked Ole Miss receivers in the past.
Yeah,
There's
right.
32 teams that would love to have both of them, but I don't know. His combination of size, speed, um, this is it's not a deep class as far as like legitimate superstars right away. I do think it's a deep class of talent, which is why I was okay moving him all the way up to number one on my board. Because I don't feel like the true superstars are in this class. You have a lot of quality ass receivers, don't get me wrong. But I do think he is the superstar that I feel is coming from this class. It's combination of size, speed. I mean, Ole Miss. This is probably another reason we really like Jackson Dart. Like he had throw to somebody.
Right.
Like this dude was putting up video game numbers in the SEC. I don't know. I'm. I hope he goes somewhere that I don't immediately regret this. Like he goes somewhere and you're just like, shit. He's not gonna have even the opportunity to do anything. Um, but I would be stoked if for some reason at 30, 31, Chiefs drafted him. I'd stoked.
It's like what, 6 receivers the Chiefs would have been drafted now since Patrick got his contract. But I guess I mean this one automatically may be one of their better ones if they did take him. I don't think they will, but
No, not a
uh,
chance.
if he's still sitting there in the second round, you got to be like, "Hey, well, this is almost too good to pass up." So
Yeah, I mean we've seen what injuries have done to the Chiefs at receivers the last couple years. You can't have too much depth. I'd rather Trey Harris get in there than needing to watch Sky Moore go out there when somebody needs some PT. So
yeah, and let's again. I almost made this list last night without putting Jimmy Horn on here after going on a little bit of a sleeper tangent on this guy could be a sleeper receiver. So I put him in there at number 8. I still like his sleeper ability and what he could bring to the table. One that I've been seeing more and we're very familiar with is Higgins. Don't sleep on him. Iowa State's offense is pretty good, so they're very capable of putting in good receivers. I mean, Alan Lazard's the only one that I can really think of from Iowa State like recently, but this one's different. This one's he's a big body guy. He's going to make a quarterback happy in the red zone. Is there anyone else? I think number 7 on your list.
yeah, well, number 7 and 10, Horton from Colorado State. Really like him. I think he would he'd be high on boards if he was kind of elsewhere. But him and then Nick Nash uh, would be my absolute sleeper pick. I have him 10. I just like dudes who if you're described as a receiver as sure-handed, um, you got my vote. It's another small school. I think it's like San Jose State or something. Um, Small dude, like a million catches this year. Um, it was only like 140 or whatever, but still. Uh, but I want to touch on your Iowa State one. I actually have both Iowa State receivers in my top 10 with Higgins and Noel.
Hmm.
Um, Alan Lazard, I think that Hutchinson
Oh yeah,
dude
Xavier
on the
Hutchinson. Duh.
Texans. Like they have some receivers and they like them big. Um, so again, it's a deep receiver class. Maybe not superstar wise, but there's a lot of receivers that you're going to be getting middle and late rounds that you're going to be pretty happy about.
Yeah, and so yeah, that's a good question there from our guys. Uh, it looks like it's the Three Guys Six Balls podcast. They'll be joining us next week, by the way, for another draft kind of preview.
Shout out.
Shout out. We do have him. I have him on my list, I believe. I have him at number 6. You don't have him on your list.
The question was, how do we feel about AO Eric Manor, AO Manor from Stanford?
Honestly, Stanford doesn't have many bright spots, but he was definitely one of them. I like him as a day two guy. I think as far as what he was able to do at Stanford with what they had, again with what they had, um, you know, I'm not really ready to say he's going to be an elite wide receiver, but I do think he could be a steal and one of the better receivers out of this class if taken in the right selection or spot.
Yeah, I didn't have him top 10, but he is one of the ones you would be extremely happy to hear your team draft in the middle rounds or wherever he ends up going. I think receiver a little different than running back, but also similar. You have probably 15 to 18 receivers that you're going to be okay with your team drafting at some point. Um, that he's one of them. Um, if he goes to the right situation, I think he could easily be one of the top receiver twos in the league. Um, which honestly, if you can guarantee my dude's going to be at least a top two NFL receiver on a team, that's a pretty safe pick.
It is, and again, as a smartass, I put Quentin Skinner as number 10. Another KU guy. Again, if he's KU, more than likely he's going to make my top 10 just because I have a good chance of that maybe, I don't know, working out again. But like Dominic Cooney last year, but again, I don't think there's gonna be a better guy from KU other than Devin Neal. And we'll look at defense tomorrow, Saturday. But Kobe Bryant, Melo Dotson, some of those guys, with Logan Brown later on with the offensive line. Um, you know, it's it's a pretty weak receiver class when you think about how this top 10 shapes out. So um, there's nothing else really I need to.
Yeah, there's no Malik Neighbors coming out of this class.
No Brian Thomas,
No.
none of those guys. So again, still fairly weak. And then again, Golden from Texas is another guy who some could see as a first round. I think he's a boomer bust type. But again, think about all the guys the fast receivers who have been taken in the first round. Not all of them panned out. I think I heard this on one of these guys' podcast, talking about uh, Ruggs running a 40 and then obviously going up well over 40. Um, so that was a fun stat that they put on their episode of talking about guys, fast receivers, just because they run a 40, don't always pan out. So moving on to tight ends real quick. Um, it's Loveland 2, Warren number 1. That's kind of how it kind of played out for us. Basically 3 downs, kind of a crapshoot. I had Harold Fannin Jr. at 3. You had Ferguson at 3. I had Arroyo at 4. You had Fannin at 4. I had Ferguson 5. You had Arroyo 5. Mason
Hey,
Taylor. We had Mason Taylor together at 6. Gunnar Helm at 7 for me. You had Evans at 7. And then I had Evans 8. You had Helm at 8. And then your suck 9. You had Brenning Stool. I had Brenning Stool 10. And you had Gadsden. Um,
that's that Syracuse tight end, right? Like talking about Kyle McCord putting up numbers. Like that's that like I don't know how these tight ends are ranked or where they're projected to go, but he's one of those. If I when I tune into the draft and see Chiefs draft Gatson in like round 5, I'm gonna be over the moon with that pick. Again, I think outside of Warren and Loveland, those two dudes are gonna be. Those are going to be superstars. Um, I
I think
n-
Fannin has a chance to be a superstar. I
I
really
well,
liked watching him at Bowling Green
Fannin and
and
Ferguson
what he
are
was able to do.
positional. I think like situational.
Right.
I don't think it matters where Warren and Loveland go. They're gonna just be studs, kind of like Bowers. He went to the Raiders. Nobody does good at the Raiders. Bowers did. Um, but this is actually a deep tight end class. Especially you have a couple superstars, a couple potential ones, and then just a lot of really quality people to round out the top 10. Like Brenningstool at one point was thought of. Most people probably thought he'd be up there with Warren and Loveland when his college career started. Not taken away from him, but I think that's just how decent this tight end class is. And you know me, I love my tight ends. Um, Honestly, the only my least favorite is probably Helm, but I do know teams feel pretty good about him. He he has some good tape. Um, but yeah, it'd be a good year to need a tight end or even some tight end depth because I like this class.
Yeah, it's a pretty good class. Tight ends are such a crapshoot anymore. Again, you don't know what any of these guys are going to do. You know, the tight end position in the NFL is changing year to year. It's not the big, the big bruisers anymore. You want the more athletic guys, the Kyle Pitts, Brock Bowers, who's kind of like that unicorn right now of big body slash receiver like type of tight end. What Travis Kelsey
Was
was, George Kittle still kind of
when
in
healthy,
and
yeah.
out. So we'll see. Like Evan Ingram when he was coming out of Ole Miss, he was kind of that speedster, but he just wasn't in a good situation. And the first part, what like his first 2 or 3 years was the injury, kind of riddled type. But he again was more of a not necessarily on the line type of tight end as he was a slot receiver lining up in the slot. So again, I think only a handful of these guys are actually able to do such a thing like that as far as lining up in the slot and being able to line up on the line. I think of those 10, I only think maybe 4 or 5 of those guys could, maybe. Um, but again, like you said, depth piece, just kind of maybe growing into an offense and what they're trying to do as far as that goes. Um, anyone on here that may surprise you, let's say from 5 down.
No, I think Taylor is kind of the uh, I don't want to say question mark, but I think he's the one I'm gonna be the most curious on because I do think it's there for him. I don't think he's just fully come around to it. Um, he's one that if he could go and learn behind, I always use Kels just because he's old, not because I'm a Chiefs fan.
Right.
But if you can go somewhere and kind of be the number two guy for a little bit and just learn, well, I'll use the Niners so it's not always Chiefs. You can go learn from Kittle for a year or two, learn the ins and outs, and realize his own potential. I think he has a very good chance of being thought of as. I think he could overtake Loveland for the number two tight end in this class. Like if he fully comes around to it, I don't think anyone's topping Warren.
Yeah. God, I want Warren so bad at 20. There beginning it looked like we may have a chance to now there's probably no chance to now am I going to be okay with Loveland at 20? Maybe. I don't know, man. It's I would even be okay with Fannin in the second or third, if he were there. I have a hard time thinking he's going to get out of the second round, especially with some teams in the back end of the second round. But
Well, and I think with you guys signing Ingram, that moves you away from a first round tight end unless Warren drops. Especially when you have your starting tight end, so you'll look for one of these depth pieces later on.
right,
I do think if Warren's there, Sean Payton's not stupid. Um, but yeah, Loveland at 20 would be fine if you guys were still needing a tight end. But I think he took care of that, and I don't know, it'd be weird to sign the free agent and then use your 20th pick to double up at a position. I don't. Does Sean run a lot of two tight end?
oh, I mean, you're yes, but and no. I mean, it really just depends on personnel, right? It's like Manhurst his first year in Denver with Troutman, and then obviously Atkins, Kroll, Lucas Kroll last year too. So I think it gives him another weapon because then he could really put Evan Ingram out there in the slot where he'd want him, and then still have his tight end on the line. I wouldn't put it past him. I think maybe a 5% chance that they would take a tight end at 20, unless it's one of those top three. Well, top two and then three on mine. I don't. I would freak out if they took Fan in the first round. I don't. They're not that stupid. I don't think so. Um, anything else on the tight ends?
Nah, outside of I just love him.
Yeah. All right. Let's moving right along here.
Yeah, these ones are a little harder to talk about. So
Yeah, we won't
mm,
spend too much time on the interior line.
we know how important they are, but there's not a whole lot of sexiness we can throw out there.
Last year it was easy because it was Pooney, and there were some other good ones that we were able to throw out and throw in there. So again, um, as we get our list to load here real quick, so PFF has Booker, Wilson, Ratledge, Lampkin, Kandra, McLaughlin, Colby, Cooper, Monheim, and Fairchild is their 10. We're kind of all over the place.
Yeah.
But I think you liked Booker at 1. I like Booker at 2. Um, again, could he be the first one? Absolutely. Could Wilson be the first one? Yes. Really, any of the top 5 could be the first one, and you would be fine with it. I do like Kandra as maybe a sleeper of this group. Um, just his ability and what he's able to bring as far as that goes. Linemen are sexy too.
No, I
God,
agree, but it's hard to talk. You know, we can't
you
really talk stats with them, and
and you have a better chance of getting us with the tackles,
yeah.
right? Like we'll know a little bit more about the tackles, but it is these guys who are super important. And again, like I said, I like Kandra as the sleeper of this group. Uh, Lampkin maybe, but again, you can't go wrong with Wilson or Booker as the first one, uh, kind of off the board. But again, these aren't the second. These are maybe your third or fourth round guys. There may be a one that squeezes in the second round. I would be shocked if any of them make the first round. Uh, I don't think there's really anybody here that's maybe a swing. No, I don't think so either. Um, anything really on the interior offensive line before we jump into the tackles real quick?
Uh, no, I think the only one that I added that PFF didn't was Frazier from LSU. Um, I wanted to move him a little higher, but I also wanted to be kind of realistic and not be as insane as I usually am. Uh, but other than that, I think the top 10 was pretty close. Like you said, the order could go either way. I mean, do you value the center or the guard more? Because that's the interior. That's why those could be all over the place, right? It, it really depends, but not a whole lot to go over on the interior.
And then let's go to the tackles because there's some really good ones in this one. And there's a few guys that I really am excited to talk about. So PFF has Will Campbell, and then Membu, 2, Simmons, then Banks Jr., Zabel, Conley Jr., Jackson, Ursay, or
Ursery.
Ursery, sorry, Trapilo, and then Imbo. Imbo won me a national championship, or was on part of a national championship team on NCAA 25 when I was Purdue. So I obviously love him. Not enough to put on my top 10, but again, this is a list where literally any of those first four with Campbell, Embu, Simmons, Banks, those guys could be any of those guys could be the first ones.
No, I agree. I like the Mimbu the most. You and I both had him one, uh, and I think that's saying a lot, just given where he's coming from. Uh, Trying to put that I don't want to say hatred, but that rival aside, the dude's a stud. Um, just to prove what our three dudes, six balls was saying, like linemen are sexy, and proof. I think he's a huge reason for the turnaround that they've had the last couple years. Um, Not saying they still wouldn't have won some games without him, uh, but they wouldn't have won them as much without him. So I'm big on him. I know early on in the off season it was rumored that Chiefs might try to trade up to get him. Again, I'm not huge on that just because of the draft capital it would take to move up from 31.
And it's LOL when a Chiefs fan tries to talk tackles.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't been happy with too many of them. Uh, I mean, at least we got the Eric Fisher one right. He was right over Jokel, so there's that. But I there's a lot of good tackles in this draft. I like Banks quite a bit. Um,
There at the beginning, I think beginning of the offseason, I actually had Banks as number one, but obviously that's just early on, and I loved him at Texas, obviously, but then you start watching those other guys and you're starting to see, okay, yeah, Banks isn't necessarily the best one, but he is, in my opinion. These top three are probably I think have first round grades in my opinion.
yeah, and I think you look at I'm not gonna look at PFF because they don't know as much as us. On my list specifically, I think all 9 are starting caliber tackles. Um, Jones is my sleeper, which is why I threw him 10. Um, but yeah, I think the Zabel dude, the small school fella, I like him a lot too. I have him 4. Um, but it's a good time to need tackles. Um, I know the Chiefs paid one, so I'm not on board on the first round tackle, but I think one of the second ones like Jackson and Ursery, even Imbo, I think those are very much in play come round 2. Um, but yeah, no, it's a great time to need tackles. I'm gonna let you just talk about your number 10 just to make sure we get it in. Uh, but it's a great time to need a tackle.
Yeah, so I have Logan Brown at 10,
Hey,
another KU guy.
do you still think he'll be a tackle?
I don't. So this was similar to what Dominic Cooney was last year with Niners, and again, couldn't have been drafted into a better situation, right? Could not have been 49ers and their offensive lineman Dominic Cooney fit in absolutely well. We couldn't have. That was probably one we did get lucky on, right? But at the same time, we
No,
we literally watched the dude every game at KU. Didn't give up any sacks. Pressures were very limited, and it translated to the NFL. Now there were a couple games where he did give up a couple pressures, but I still don't think he gave up a sack.
he didn't.
I like Logan Brown because he's very comparable to Cooney. He wasn't as good as Dominic Cooney was at KU this last season, but again, the situation calls for it. If it's the right staff, team, I do like him to possibly be a sleeper.
He had a great pro day.
He had a really good pro day, and again, where KU has been to where they're at now, we've got some damn good offensive linemen, and I love seeing this. And there was no bigger fans of Dominic Cooney last year than us. We talked about him every week on our show, just because we were able to watch what he was doing, and we always gave the KU guys shout outs. Austin Booker with the Bears. Now we're gonna have Devin Neal to add to the list. Hopefully Logan Brown, Kobe Bryant, Mello Dotson. So again, yes, we're KU fans.
But
We grew up with shitty KU football, so let us have this. Um,
yeah, I mean,
but these guys are quality, and I think Dominic Cooney maybe sets the tone and trend of where the KU offensive lineman can be.
yeah, I mean, previously when we would say shit like this, there was no hope that these best case was going to be undrafted free agent. These,
Chris Harris, and that turned out pretty fucking good.
yeah, him and Talib. It had to be in Denver, of course, but um, I think the fact that we can say this now and there be whether he's actually a top 10 lineman off the board to be seen, but the fact that it's not far off is just proof where we've come. I love Logan Brown. He's not a big boy like Cooney, so I'm still on the fence of like a right tackle, kind of tackle guard combo that he can, which is extremely valuable. Let's
Very,
let's not
very,
let's not just sweep that under the rug. Versatile linemen are you can argue up there quarterback, pass rusher, versatile offensive lineman next. Um, I think that's where he's at, and I think that's actually extremely valuable. I think your Skinner in the top 10 was kind of ridiculous. I love KU too, but I think Logan Brown in the top 10 actually has a decent amount of merit, especially after his pro day.
yeah. It's fantastic just seeing where they've came from as far as it was a dark 10 years for KU football fans, and now to see, yes, we had to keep Talib, Chris Harris, and there's others. there's others out there. But now you're starting to see it become more of a trend, right? Austin Booker got really good run last year with the Bears, Cooney with the Niners, and then this good class that we have. Even if these guys come in as undrafted guys, it doesn't matter. They'll make a team as far as like practice squad or special teams goes.
I've been seeing some of the breakdowns, and I won't touch too much on it because we'll touch on it Saturday. But just to dive onto this point a little bit, we've been starting to see some national breakdown of Kobe Bryant. Uh, we won't go into intangibles, but just his willingness and toughness. Um, it kind of proves just where KU's come from because we didn't even used to have that. We used to just be kind of a wet blanket out there. Come have your way with us, and then let the next team do it the following week. So um, it is enjoyable. I hope I hope at some point the Chiefs can get one. I've had enough of this K State Missouri run for my Chiefs. Just give me a damn KU player for crying out loud.
And I'm not gonna obviously, like you said, we won't get too far into Kobe Bryant, but I will say in this draft class, there's no one tougher than Kobe Bryant and what he's able to do. Don't let his size fool you, and we'll get into that Saturday. But again, like I said, there's no one in this draft that's tougher than Kobe Bryant and more durable. So that's going to wrap it up today. Again, sorry for the technical difficulties. We may just put some reels out and some shorts instead of doing audio of the show. It'll obviously be on YouTube, so you're more than welcome to check it out there. As he said, back Saturday. We're gonna get this shit fixed for you guys. We're gonna get it figured out. We have a couple days to get that figured out and working correctly so we don't have to have these same issues. So come find us on Instagram. I was gonna say we have a TikTok now.
Oh
I,
yeah.
I never thought we would break down and be a TikTok group, but I put 3 posts on there just to say we had posts. So come find us on Instagram and TikTok at Shovik Sports. Again, you can find us on Apple, Spotify, and iHeart, but I don't think we'll have an audio episode up this week. And then obviously subscribe to our YouTube channel. Let's keep getting our numbers growing. And next Wednesday, after our Saturday episode, we have our friends three guys, six balls NFL podcast. And from what I heard, they're absolutely hilarious. And we can't wait to chop it up with those guys next week, the night before the draft, when everything's getting kind of down to the wire. So again, appreciate everyone and their patience today, and we'll see you guys in a couple days.